Hello, this is Food Offensive Weekly News for April 1st, 2013, and no, this is not an April Fool's Day joke. This is real news, real things that are going on in our food supply and the real dangers involved with the food that we are eating. And I will start off here with something a little soft, and of course it always is going to lead into something extremely dangerous or extremely alarming. So the first article here this week is from March 26th. Food Safety News reported on the continuing horse meat scandal. And again, horse meat has been detected in another food product, and this time it is the chicken nuggets in Greece. And the horse meat detected in the chicken nuggets in Greece is not just in chicken, but it looks like also pre-cooked frozen burgers to have more than 50%, Frankfurter sausage, and some other products that had horse DNA that being detected at various levels. Go to meatinfo.co.uk for a full list of those recalled products. And it's a really short article, but he ends by saying that the horse meat substitution has struck a nerve, however, as people wonder what else they're eating that isn't what they think it is. And that was just my sentiments. That's what my sentiments have been this last few weeks and last month that this has been going on, in the fact that it's not the issue of eating horse itself that's really gross or surprising at all. It's the fact that it's in products that we wouldn't expect it to be in, or it's not labeled as such, and it is really a food labeling issue. And as we've been covering a lot of food labeling things, mostly with GMOs, but this is obviously something that you buy a product that you think is one type of food or one type of meat, and it has another type of food or meat, and not to mention all the other undeclared ingredients that could be in it that we don't even know about. But like I said, this is just a minor issue compared to what else is going on. And if some of you thought that horse meat was a terrible thing to eat or a terrible thing to have in your food without you knowing it, what about human tissue? That's right. Activist Post and many others have reported on this week, but Activist Post article is titled "Human Tissue Found in Meats, but Eating It is, quote, no threat." And that's what the authorities are telling us about this. This is Amanda Warren from Activist Post, March 29th. She says, the horse meat fiasco in Europe has prodded scientists to look a bit deeper into what else we might be consuming. A team of South African scientists have just found traces of human tissue in meat meant for public consumption from 9 provinces. A couple of things I want to point out in this article. It says slaughterhouse workers sometimes cut themselves or other things, which could lead to the findings. But this whole issue is it brings up the global hot button topic of the moment, food labeling. How much should we know about what we are consuming? Well, if you've been following my site or my videos for any length of time, you'll know that you might be better off not knowing what's in it. But I think it's time for us to no longer play dumb anymore. It's not working for us, and it's not really healthy, obviously. It's better to just face the facts and face the music and actually do something about it, instead of by doing nothing, we're allowing them to push it further and get worse. Of course, I work in the food industry, and I really know how that is. In these, in these meatpacking plants, a lot of times it's in a refrigerated area, and you're actually working in the cold. And of course, nowadays they have the cut gloves and the things like that, and multiple layers of gloves and clothing on. But when you cut yourself, you really don't know that you've cut yourself. I remember in culinary school doing that in the fish butchering class and things like that. You don't realize you've cut yourself because it's cold in there. Your hands are already kind of cold and tingly. You cut yourself. You don't know that you've cut yourself, until Lord knows how long it's been. And you're like, okay, is that the animal's blood or is that my blood? I mean, that's just how it is. It might be grossing people out, but this is food offensive, and that's just how it is. So the problem here, though, is sometimes the laissez-faire attitude of this, and then also the regulators, of course, just passing it off as, oh, well, this happens, or it's totally safe. As we've learned before, you can't just trust them on the surface. You got to look further. Article goes on. In the labeling regulations, it clearly states that allergens have to be mentioned and noted, said Hoffman. So I like what she says in her article. Allergens like other people's genetic signature? I mean, seriously. They, of course, this Deputy Director General of South Africa's Department of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries has downplayed this issue by asserting that we are not becoming unwitting cannibals. He says, quote, it is possible that if tested, we could find traces of human DNA in meat. However, even if we do find human DNA, it does not mean we are eating human flesh. Well, I would beg to differ, because what keeps us from a worker cutting the tip of their finger off, and bad enough where it's bad enough for a chunk to go in there, but not bad enough where they could get away with not reporting it, whether they weren't, working and for companies that have such strict safety standards. You get in trouble if you're doing these things. And so if you're doing something wrong and hurt yourself, so they might try to hide it. Well, where'd that piece of their finger go? Well, it could be in Wendy's chili, as we've learned in the past, and I'm sure things happened in the recent times that have caused that. And books coming out a long time ago, like The Jungle back in 1906, dealing with immigrant workers. And there's been movies and things that have come out that I've seen, whether they've stretched the truth a little bit, or it's obviously based on some form of fact. Well, I mean, what people in the conditions in meatpacking plants are extremely dangerous. What keeps people from, getting hurt? And hey, we're trying to run a tight business here, and we can't stop the assembly line, and we got to keep working here. And I'm sorry, if you half your legs into the ground beef, no one's going to know the difference. So that's kind of the attitude that we got to be aware of it, whether it's happening or we believe it's happening or not. And this article goes on to say, we are evidently eliminating healthy microorganisms in the processing of foods, but since there is an acceptable standard of nasty foreign entities, thanks to our regulatory agencies, we have introduced a variety of contaminants into now weakened guts and immune systems. And we'll talk about the weakened gut and that whole issue around GMOs here in a second, with another article that was just happened to be out this week. But it says, we'd like to think that these food scandals are safe from us. Overseas, it's their problem, we might say. But big problems are usually systemic. It doesn't sound like anyone's literally being run through the meat grinder just yet. Literally, yeah, I have a feeling that actually happens. And we have scientists and regulatory agencies continually asserting how safe our food supply is. And she ends by saying, perhaps we should be asking ourselves before each meal, hey, who's in there? How'd they get in there? Anyone missing? And so, of course, you can take it as jokingly as you want, but it's a serious issue, not just for our own food safety and what we eat, but the rights of those working in those poor conditions in the meatpacking plants. So we got to think about that as well. What's the cost of getting cheaper food to our table? What's it worth to you? And now, like I said, there was another article this week, how GMO farming and food is making our gut flora unfriendly. This is from greenmedinfo.com by Sayer G. He's the founder of it. He posts a lot of articles on here, and I monitor it every week to see what he's got going on. But he points out 2 studies that are recently published in the past 6 months revealing a disturbing finding. glyphosate-based herbicides such as Roundup appear to suppress the growth of beneficial gut bacteria, leading to the overgrowth of extremely pathogenic bacteria. So on one hand, you're processing the food, and like the other article alluded to, we're heavily processing food and killing the good bacteria, and then we're constantly eating foods that are come in contact with glyphosate and other dangerous chemicals, and it would then have that much more of an effect on us because we've killed the good bacteria and are overloading it with the bad bacteria. But basically, this article looks at some new research that says Roundup may be contributing to the overgrowth of harmful bacteria both in GM-produced food and our own bodies by suppressing the growth of beneficial bacteria and encouraging the growth of pathogenic ones. And he points out the fact that GMO plants sprayed with Roundup, they can bioaccumulate glyphosate and or glyphosate metabolites, adding to the consumer's bodily burden of these gut flora altering highly toxic chemicals. And another subsection in here, GMO herbicides kill more than weeds, are broad spectrum biocides. He says when combined with adjuvants and other so-called inactive ingredients, the glyphosate formulations are far more toxic than their component ingredients taken in isolation. A 2012 study published in the journal Environmental Monitoring and Assessment found that Roundup herbicide has DNA damaging effects to fish after short-term environmentally low concentration exposures. And then, of course, there's also evidence that there's destructive effects on the fertility of the soil itself because of all this use of glyphosate and other herbicides. And it says one of the key implications of this finding is that since many of the beneficial bacteria that make up the 100 trillion bacteria in our gut necessary for health come from our food, and these bacteria-rich foods nourish and help maintain the flora in our gut, the removal of key beneficial microorganisms from the soil will likely result in profoundly disrupting the bacteria-mediated infrastructure of our health. So as more and more studies come out, more and more evidence shows that these things have been proven dangerous for us, and potentially the creators and pushers of these products might have known about this all along, and they very well have known. But if that wasn't bad enough, and as we continue to learn more about this, the GMOs in general and the things that are in our foods, as I cover here each week, there's some new, quite startling GMO news, and John Rappaport actually lays it out quite well in his blog, and he has a article titled "Brand New GMO Food Can Rewire Your Body, and There's More Evil Coming." He starts out, this is March 26, 2013 by John Rappaport, nomorefakenews.com. He said it's really bad, or it's already bad, very bad. For the past 25 years, the biotech Dr. Frankensteins have been inserting DNA into food crops. And countries have banned GMO crops, or they've insisted on labeling. Well, all but America, of course, you know. Now, though, the game is changing, and it'll make things even more unpredictable. The threat is ominous and drastic, to say the least. And he's referring to this GM Watch report on this latest GMO innovation, and it's this: designed food plants that make new double-stranded RNA. What does the RNA do? It can silence a gene. It can activate a gene that was silent. And he says if you have genes lighting up and going dark in unpredictable ways, the functions of a plant or a body can change randomly. Genes that were doing their jobs could stop doing their jobs, and then others could perform tasks that weren't meant to be performed. As GM Watch reports, an Australian company, Cicero has designed wheat and barley seeds that put genes to sleep, quote, to change the type of starch made by the plant. See, it always starts out as an innovation to help revolutionize farming and better production of plants. Well, what cost and what length are we going to make this happen, I would add. And he goes on, GM Watch states there is published evidence that the designer RNA can move from the plants into the bodies of people who eat the plants, outlasting cooking and digestion and winding up in the bloodstream. So he basically says walk around with designer RNA in your body and who knows what effects will follow. Yeah, you do not know. It's like the genetic roulette that Jeffrey M. Smith in his new documentary really lays out. He says they also fail to make the connection between junk science and the greed for profit at any human cost. Every new DNA or RNA tweaked to a plant, no matter how insane, allows them to file a patent to own that new artificially designed piece of nature. This is their approach, and it's obvious they intend to control the planet's food supply. And they, I would say, are very much on their way to doing that. In fact, I've been covering the new Monsanto Protection Act and the whole issues around that last couple of weeks, and this is going to be something that continues, and he really ends his article with that same idea. He says the new Monsanto Protection Act, as it's called, is a cynical piece of legislation that underlines this lack of concern. It torpedoes the ability of the court system to stop new gene design crops from popping up everywhere. And his source from GM Watch 3/22/13, new paper on dsRNA risks, briefing for non-specialists, and GMWatch.org. There's the link there, and I will have that link in the video as well. But this is quite disturbing, quite alarming. If we thought we had gone too far, think again. And with that, of course, there's many articles this week that came out, as there always are, and that I have to kind of pick and choose what I'm going to cover and what's most pressing and what's best use of my time and in these videos. But with the whole GMO debate, the labeling debate, the post Prop 37 voting, the huge battle over that, and along with the other states that have recently come to the forefront in fighting GMO labeling and fighting for or fighting against, whichever way you want to look at it. Kashi has come back under fire, and possibly, and quite mainly because of the Organic Consumers Association. They've kind of brought this back to light about, this is my action alert this week, with an Organic Consumers Association encouragement to boycott Kashi, tell Kellogg's you're boycotting Kashi and buy Nature's Path instead. And I really wanted to show this, and there's a funny video that was made, kind of a parody for Kashi, and it's quite funny. It could be offensive as well, but I wanted to show that here. But I'll show that quickly after going over this article. If you remember, I covered this as well. Actually, around this time last year, there's some backlash over Kashi, and a greengrocer took pictures of it and said they're basically not gonna sell it anymore, and outed the product, basically, that pointed out the misleading wording and the all-natural wording and things on the packaging. And of course, it caused Kashi to run damage control and come out and make a little video with their one of the representatives on there saying, we can't control the GMO, what GMO gets into our food and all this stuff. And after they were found to have 100% GMO soy in their products, and one of their products specifically. So this Organic Consumers Association is really bringing this back up too, partially because of Kellogg's fight against Prop 37 and their support of the No on 37 campaign. They basically, their article here starts out by saying, buying organic and other non-GMO foods is the best way to beat Monsanto. But there's an exception to that rule: buying organic or non-GMO brands owned by companies actively fighting the campaign for GMO labels. And it points out the fact that Kellogg's spent $790,700 of its profits to defeat our right to know. This was back in the Prop 37 debate. And they say, looking for alternatives, buy Nature's Path. See, they gave $606,826 to the Yes on 37 CA Right to Know campaign. So they gave almost the same amount for it that Kellogg's gave against it. And of course, Kellogg's is the owner of Kashi, and I've shown here many times the great picture showing basically titled "Who Owns Organic," and it just shows all the companies that, like Pepsi and the big companies that own actual subsidiaries that are organic labels. And I'm fine with that if it gets the actual organic label out there. And these companies, of course, understand that there's a growing market for organics, and they wouldn't do anything that isn't going to make money. I mean, rightfully so. They're a company that it's a for-profit company. But the fact of the matter is, how can sometimes we have to make sure we can trust them when there's an organic product under the heading of another company that's known for pushing GMOs. That's something that we really need to be aware of, and organizations like the Organic Consumers Association fights for that freedom and for that truth. And they basically lay out three more reasons to boycott Kashi and Kellogg's. They point out, number one, Kellogg's proudly uses GMOs. And two, Kashi hides its use of GMOs. Although I would give them kudos for they've pledged to work with a non-GMO project to have some of their products non-GMO verified. So that's a good step in the right direction, and maybe that came in light of the Whole Foods demanding the products be labeled, because they obviously know that they have to do that if they want their food sold in Whole Foods. Then they're going to have to do that anyway. So, of course, it's back to the whole financial reasons and financial motivation. And number three, Kashi's, quote, natural claims are a fraud. The consumers have actually filed a class action lawsuit alleging that Kashi deceptively advertised its Goline and TLC products as, quote, all natural, but in fact it's misleading because they contain GMOs. And a judge has allowed attorneys to pursue compensation for U.S. consumers who purchased falsely labeled Kashi products. So again, just holding them accountable. If just be honest with the product and know that people are after the good healthy products, and you can actually win them over in more than one ways and actually make money for yourself. But here's that short video right now, that little parody video for Kashi cereal.
We at Kashi Cereal take pride in our wholesome, natural, real ingredients. These almonds, these are real almonds. Technically. These oats, these are real oats. Depending on your definition of the words real and oat. And these soybeans, these are real genetically modified soybeans. That's right. The magic of science allows us to bring you the latest in soybean technology. Real? Kind of. Natural? Delicious? You bet. And all of this natural realness is harvested by natural, real Mexicans. Hola. You're welcome, migrant workers. Kashi. We give natural a whole new meaning. No Mexicans were genetically modified during filming. A few, however, were deported. Lo siento.
Well, and there you have it. It's, like I said, funny and possibly offensive, but I think it's a good way to wake people up, and people are into that stuff. When you look on YouTube and you see, if you just you click on the most popular or trending tabs on YouTube, all it is crap, along that same lines of people either doing stupid stuff or getting hurt or whatever it is. So that's the type of stuff that maybe people will watch, and they'll be educated without even knowing it. So that's kind of the action alert this week, to make headway against the GMOs that are not being labeled, and the deceptive labeling things that are being labeled deceptively. And of course, the Monsanto Protection Act, that's still in the forefront of our minds. And also here that we begin in April, the genetically engineered salmon debate that's going on, and our potential victory over it if we take action and let our Congress, senators, representatives, president know that we do not want this in our food supply. So until next time, this is foodoffensive.com with Food Offensive Weekly News. Thank you for joining me.